I broke through the carbonate, that's how I got free. Drop it back off because there's no stopping me. Postmodern player, sample-tastic, flows ekphrastic. I get drastic, hey, watch the plastic. Yo, I name check and leave you drastic.
Hi, I'm Spencer, and this is The MacGuffin, and I'm joined by Rachael Harris today. You might know her from so many things. I mean, The Hangover, Diary of a Wimpy Kid, Starsky and Hutch, Kicking and Screaming. I mean, you've been in a lot of films the last decade or so. And it was funny because I mentioned this sort of same phenomena to Matt Walsh. You have like $750 million worth of box office on your resume. And I'm not going to claim that you were responsible for every single dollar. Okay, you are.
I was responsible.
But nevertheless, it's a pretty neat thing to think about that you've been involved with a lot of films that have been well received.
Yeah.
So I mean that's a pretty cool thing.
It's a good group of people to hang out with.
Yeah. And
Yes.
one of the things that I thought that was really neat, and we'll get to Natural Selection, which is the film you're currently in,
Right.
shortly. But one of the things that I found really quite neat is that you had a pretty diverse career. I mean, you have been in major films that made hundreds of millions of dollars and all that stuff. But you've been in short films the entire decade. You've done a bunch of voiceover work I've seen, and you've even done some dramatic stuff. So it's not just comedy, like you did The Soloist.
Mm-hmm.
Was that intentional when you went to, like, when you look at the offers you're given, or do you just like how do you decide on all these projects, because you have a very, very diverse career, which I think is somewhat uncommon in film?
Well, I think a lot of it isn't. I haven't chosen to do those things. I've really wanted to do those things, and I've made it clear to the agents and managers that I'm working with that I mean, if I could choose, what I was doing, what I got to do, it would probably look very different. But a lot of it is based on, your agents and managers saying they want to see you for this, and then me saying, great, I'd love to read for that, or no, I don't. But you know what, actually you do have some kind of control, because there are things that I say I'm really not interested in doing that. Like I really do have great reps, and the fact that we do carefully go through everything, and they're like, well, how do you feel about this? Like, some things I'll say I'm really not into that, and they'll say, well, this is actually working with some really great people. We think this would be good. Like, because originally Diary of a Wimpy Kid 2, I had just finished doing The Hangover. And I thought there's no way they're going to want to see me for this. And they were hesitant, but I said, I think it's exactly what we need to do.
I mean, that you talk about like two different worlds within
my
like the
gosh.
same time frame. The Hangover and Diary of a Wimpy Kid. Like, I mean, after your performance in The Hangover, I mean, I honestly would worry about you getting pigeonholed somewhat because of that. I mean, you did Angry so well.
Well, but thank you. But even leading up to that, I had been playing kind of caustic, bitches.
Sure.
And which I loved playing that, because I felt like it's fun to find the positive reason as to why they are that bitchy, because it's like you can't play negative. Otherwise it's just bad. And so you have to find out, there's a really good reason that she's in her mind, in my mind, for me to be like that, the reason that I'm right. So and the reason why I'm allowed to be that mean. But I think the thing is that those roles were really great. But when it came to Diary of a Wimpy Kid 2, that was a very cognizant choice, where we thought, I need to start playing things that are likable, and that aren't always, bitchy, and also I started out doing drama and theater, and it was never my intention to do just comedy. So it's been great to like be able to get work as a comedic actress. But then now to kind of branch out and start doing other things is really what I've been wanting to do from the beginning.
I think that, and I think the two of them being at not the exact same time, but within the same sort of time frame is really, it's neat to see that sort of diversity in both, I guess, the projects you get attached to, as well as just, just the projects in general, because you necessarily wouldn't think like, oh, she's going to be in this movie or whatever, but I think it was a good balance.
I was glad Fox was like, that's fine.
Yeah.
We'll take that woman who said those horrible things in The Hangover.
But I mean, at the same time, you're so memorable in the movie that I mean, that's got to be somewhat gratifying because maybe Rachael Harris isn't necessarily a household name, but like you're like she's in The Hangover, and they're like, oh, okay. And I mean, it's sort of like, okay, The Hangover might bring people in, but then once they're in, maybe they'll check out Diary of the Wimpy Kid and see like the full range you have available.
Yeah, well, that's the thing about this movie, even in particular, Natural Selection, is that Robbie, who directed and wrote the screenplay, was meeting with actresses, and in the beginning, he was like, "I'm not going to meet with her for this film. That's what? Are you serious?" He's like, "She's totally not right for this. It's dramatic and sweet," and he had only seen all these really bitchy roles that I had done, and he was like, and so his casting director said, well, you need to meet X amount of actresses, and so he met with me, and then in the meeting he was like, because his big thing is he thinks that most of 90% of casting is hyperbole, so it's like once he got a sense of who I was and that he realized, oh, she's an actress. And that this role in Natural Selection was probably closer to who I really am in the first place. Then he was like, then I had to read for him.
But that's sort of the funny thing is, though, you do such a good job of doing a performance that people then believe that's who you actually are. Yeah. And sort of like, I mean, I don't know how you besides doing these other roles, sort of back away from that and be like, that was just a performance, people. Like, that is not really who I am.
Yeah, yeah. And yes.
I was just going to say, and it's sort of a shame that, you have done some other things like, The Soloist, which is obviously not a comedy.
Right.
That sort of...
It wasn't? Because I found it hilarious.
Jamie Foxx is a pretty funny guy, but, it's sort of funny, though.
If you found him funny in The Soloist, then Joe Wright has a terrible problem.
No. I mean, The Soloist was a nice sort of film. It sort of got lumped in sort of, a whole wave of sort of like, oh, these are dramatic musician stories sort of, and kind of got lost in that shuffle. But I mean, it's neat to see that because you come from an improv background as well. You were in the Groundlings. I mean, how challenging is that as an actress to sort of go from, the improv mindset to like a very dramatic sort of movie like that? I mean, and that Natural Selection, all these other ones, because, it's a much more sort of rigid environment, I would imagine. Yeah.
Well, I think when you think of improv, you think of that it's comedy, that it's comedic.
Sure.
But the reality is that if I think it's really important for all actors to take improv classes, and because even though you're working with, like, I didn't really improvise very much on Natural Selection. I really didn't want to, because I felt like the character, Robbie had such a clear vision for the character, and that I didn't really need to. But I think when you're doing a drama, it's like, because even if you know the lines and you know all the lines down, you still have to, each take, you're improvising a little bit with how you deliver the lines and what your intent is. And if you're not used to trying things within the line differently, does that make sense?
I don't know. I mean, does it sort of like...
sort of make you very rigid. And so even if you're not necessarily changing the words up, you're still trying different tacks within the scene.
Sort of, getting more in touch with who that character is, so to speak, sort of like understanding their perspective. You talk about doing it for The Hangover or doing it for Diary of a Wimpy Kid or whatever, sort of understanding the motivations of why that person acts that way, whether it's a likable sort of character, but, nevertheless, everyone has their motivations, and it's sort of like, we might not agree with them, but they do have the reasons why they do these things.
Exactly.
And so, in using improv to do that, does that just sort of, like, allow you a little bit of flexibility? I mean, obviously, I'm not saying, like, in a drama, you're going to be like, oh, and you killed my mother, or something like that.
Right, you're not going to create a new scenario in the middle of the drama.
Yeah.
Right, is that what you're saying?
Yeah. No.
Well, I think when you're improvising in a drama, I mean, it's trickier, but I think it's also just I tend to think of it as kind of putting it in your own words. Like even in The Soloist, when we there were a lot of scenes with Stephen Root and I and Robert Downey Jr. And then and Catherine Keener, and a lot of that was improvised. You know, we had the basic structure that Susanna Grant wrote for the screenplay, but then, if you remember, I think we were in the middle of a writer's strike when we were shooting that.
Yeah, that was probably.
So it was dicey. Like we weren't allowed to change it very much, but even within that, Joe Wright had us improvise some of those lines, you know, and just to make it more our own. But we had to first know, you know, what the intention of the scene was and where it was going, and you had to stay within the parameters of that scene. So.
I mean, it's interesting, you know, in addition to just dramas, you've done sort of smaller films, you know, as I spoke of the shorts and stuff like that. How do you get involved with a film like Natural Selection? I mean, granted, I mean, it's got a few name people, yourself included, in it, but like, do you actively say, you know, I want all the independent films I can see come my way, or do you, like, how do you sort of go about doing that once you reach, like, you know, like Hangover or Kicking and Screaming or all these $100 million films? It seems like, you know, it would be very easy for people to just be like, why would I even try and give her my script, because she's not going to pick it when she has all these big budget films that are on the table. Like, how do you go about getting to a film like that?
Well, I think with I can't speak for Robbie. That's actually a really good question to ask him too. But I think given the budget that we were dealing with the Natural Selection, it there's only a certain type of actor that's going to be attracted to that film. But I can only say for myself that I had said from the beginning what kind of movies I want to be doing and the kinds of things that I like. Like, I love Catherine O'Hara, and I love Frances McDormand, and there were a lot of different women that I said I love their careers. Like they're character actresses that can do comedy, but also can really do some really great dramatic work. And so I think that when my agents were reading things and my managers were reading different scripts, we didn't necessarily, you know, we were saying we wanted to do, they were looking at everything. They were looking at independent film as well as studio films.
Right.
And I think the thing for them, that because I was dictating, that I was more interested in character and story. And so, as opposed to, I'm not going to do an action movie. You know, they're not coming after me to do the Fast Five.
Well, what happens if, like, you know, Inception or something was brought to you?
Right.
Would you be willing to sort of tackle?
Because like Ellen Page was, you know, doing, like, sure, I would do that. But that's the kind of thing where there would have to be a very specific type of character. And they would say, because I feel like I'm a pretty specific type and person. You know, I mean, people are learning that I can do more than just be a bitch. But that I think everything's on a case by case basis, because then I could have also gotten an independent feature that and actually that's happened recently, where they've offered me different roles in different films, and they have been like The Bitch and another independent feature, and we're like, I'm not so much interested in doing that, but, you know, thank you for asking me to do it, you know, thank you for the offer. But so we are being very clear about the direction that we want to go in.
But I mean, one of the things that's really interesting is you really, I mean, it seems like, I mean, granted, as far as I know, there haven't been any action films on your resume, but like, you seem very open to trying different things, whether it's shorts or, you know, voice work. I saw, you know, like Stuart Little 2 and all sorts of
Funny or
stuff.
Die stuff.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's sort of like, do you look at these things as sort of new challenges? I mean, once they sort of have their foot in the door, like, hey, we got this interesting script. You haven't really done this before, but do you consider that?
Yes. No, I do like doing different things. Like, I also do voiceover work, like, for Comcast, these turtles, like the Slowski turtles.
Yeah.
And I love that because it's more like because I love the relationship between Bill and Carol and Slowski.
Yeah.
Like, it's very funny. And the actor that I do, Andrew Donnelly, who I do that's totally improvised. Like, they give us scripts and we just sit in the booth and we improvise for 3.5 hours straight. And it's ridiculously fun. And then we get to see animatronic turtles doing our improv.
Funny.
So I am game for like look, if they did come to me with an action comedy or an action film and said, we want you to play, like, we're gonna train you for 6 weeks,
right?
And we're gonna get you totally cut, and I would be like, great, let's do it. But it would have to be the right people, and I don't think I would do something if it were not a good script, or. I mean, it'd be hard if they backed the money truck up,
well, yeah.
But because I would want that experience.
That's sort of a good question, though. How do you sort of like maintain that sort of, I mean, was it?
And I do love that I just said back the money truck up. That's like the grossest thing.
Yeah, but like walking the walk, actually walking the walk, saying, like, I am willing to skip out on this.
Yes.
$3 million or whatever.
I've passed on television shows and things like that would have
locked you up for a while.
Yeah, that would have been. It would have been a completely different career track because we didn't feel like it was the right time, to do that.
Do you look at that stuff? I'm not saying. I mean, I don't know what you did not do and what the success and failures of those shows are. But do you ever sit there and you're like look back and you're like, man, I really wish I had done this? Or are you just confident with your decision?
No, I do, but I do have conversations. Like, there are things that if I told you what they were, you'd be like, what? Why would you pass on that? But then my agents and managers are great because they always remind me, they're like, there was a cognizant reason why we chose not to do this. And like, for example, the thing that I passed on, I never would have gotten to do natural selection. And that was such a great thing, because it's like, that's exactly what I want to be doing, is our films like that, and working with scripts like Robbie wrote, and working with directors that are total film geeks and nerds, and they love it, and they just want to get the best, make the best possible movie, and want to get the best performance out of you. Like, it's Robbie, yes, he wants to make money. We all want to have a living. But I think the thing that is really great is seeing that someone would rather have this great experience on this film and do the best work that you can possibly do, and instead of saying, well, I'm just going to take this easier job because it's going to give me loads of money. Because then once you get that, then you're sitting there with loads of money, but what did that say about you? What did that do for your? Because I feel like this is what we keep saying. My agents and managers keep saying long term. Like, we want you. I want to be working when I'm 90, and I feel like I'm a character actress, so I think that will happen. But I don't want to just make a bunch of money and I don't want to be poor either. So I don't want to pretend that I'm just about. But I feel like if you do the right things, if you do good work, then the money will come. But
are you like, I mean, I guess this sort of leads into like art versus, like success. Like, do you pay a lot of cognizant sort of attention to like the success of the projects you're in? Or are you just like, oh, I did that. I did my role. I played my part in making this film good. That's good enough for me. Or are you like sitting there at the box, waiting for those box office totals to come in?
But that will make you insane. Because that's the thing, is that you have no control over the end result. You can't predict what's going to happen. Yes. We did natural selection, and of course we wanted to get into film festivals. Of course we wanted to get a distributor. But that's the kind of thing that, like, we, and I think it's okay for me to say that Robbie and I and our producers constantly have to remind ourselves that we, whatever is meant to be is meant to be, and you have no control. You just have to do the best possible work that you can. But yes, you are aware. Was I aware when The Soloist, was having difficulty finding an audience? Yeah. Yes. Was I so bummed for Joe Wright and for everybody involved with that project? Absolutely.
But is that just like on a personal level because you like them, or is it?
Yes.
It's not necessarily your investment in like the film.
No, because I feel like they will. I feel like they're never gonna. I mean, unless something horrible happens, we're never gonna stop making films. We're never gonna stop making television shows. So as long as you can continue. The only thing I can control is how prepared I am and my attitude on set. And even sometimes if I'm having a bad day, that's just, but I feel like that's the only thing I can do is show up, make it as funny or as dramatic, whatever I'm supposed to do my job, and let the directors, editors, producers do what they have to do. And if it's going to make money, that's icing. You know what I mean? That's like, and I don't want to sound like
No.
Of course you want it to do well.
No, I mean, I totally understand where you're coming from.
Yep.
I also want to ask, in terms of natural selection, I was asking you how, like, you get involved in a project like this. Once you're involved in a project like this, how, like, do you look at a project? Robbie wrote the project and directed it, but how do you look at that, as, like, a pretty new director? Like, he's not got like 35 films on his resume or something.
Right.
Do you, as like a very experienced actress, go into that leery, or do you try and make it as easy for him as possible? How do you approach like that sort of new experience?
Right. Well, again, like I said, all I can do is be prepared for anything, and be prepared for absolutely, and know that I'm not going to be prepared for everything. So I felt like, I think I had, after reading Robbie's script, I was like, he knows what he's doing. And then after meeting him, I was like, he's completely passionate about what he's doing, and he has a really strong vision for what he wants to do with the film. But then there are no guarantees. Like, we could have gotten down there and it could have been an absolute nightmare as far as like not making our days. He could have wanted me to do 8,000 takes. He could have wanted like 2 takes and then we're done. It could have been really crazy. So I had to, I have a coach, that I work with, and we, had a limited amount of time between the time that I decided to do the film and then before we actually started shooting. And so I just did my work, like as an actor, like doing all my script analysis, working on things, breaking down each scene, looking at defining my relationship, what I thought, and then also leaving room for Robbie's interpretation.
Sure.
So I was nervous before we went down, and my agents had said, if you run into a problem, day 2, we'll find some reason to get you out of there. And I did not tell that, to Robbie and to our producers until we were done,
funny.
Much further along in the process. And Brian Hamble's eyes popped out of his head. And he was like, "You're kidding me. You're fucking kidding me that you had that deal." And I said, "Well, you just know that you do." And then, but I knew, I think after the first couple of hours, I was like, I'm in it, and it's going to be really hard, but I'm so excited to do it.
In terms of your character in Natural Selection, which is Linda, what exactly, when you're reading the script, do you look for to make, like, do you look for just an entire film that's cohesive, or do you look for, like, just look at your character and sort of see the evolution of the character? And, like, how do you sort of, say, this is the role that I want to play?
Well, I think for me, I can only say that I knew when I was reading, as I was reading the screenplay, I thought, this is great. I don't think I had that cognizant thought in the middle of it, but I know that by the end of it, I wanted to play the character so bad, and mainly because she was flawed, and everyone in the film had not your characteristic. I mean, everybody, like, it's sort of universal, the flaws that everybody's dealing with, but it was so interesting. And I felt like that we don't get to see women in their early 40s going through this kind of thing in such a respectful way. It's like I was saying, it wasn't like it's a Lifetime movie where she's pathetic. I mean, not that every Lifetime movie is woman is pathetic or something, but it's like, but it wasn't this cliched look at, it was a person first. I didn't feel like it's a women's film. I don't feel like I feel like it's a story. It's a really very well told story, and I feel like Linda's character in particular grows. You actually see a change in her, and I just could relate to it so much personally because I'd been through my own divorce and that sense of loss. And I know, but I also know when I feel like everyone can relate to searching, for meaning, and also having your life be one way and then having the rug pulled out from underneath you and having to kind of deal with things was really appealing.
You raise a question in my mind, though. What is the challenge like in, taking your life and putting it into film, like taking inspiration and putting it into execution? Because I could see that, if you're putting yourself out there, it's sort of hard to hold back when you're putting your real life emotions into something,
right.
or, when you really get sucked into a character, taking that back into your life. Like, how do you sort of balance that equation?
Well, I think it's actually, I like being able to take my experiences that I've had and using them in a scene and using them because I feel like that nobody else has had that experience.
No, totally.
And so when you expose that, I think that's what I like to see. When I see a film, I like to see that something, they have a personal connection to it or a realness to it. And I think that's part of the thing for me.
But does that worry you at all, sort of putting yourself really out there for like, I don't critics or whatever to judge, so to speak, and be like, that was not good or whatever. But then you'd be like, but I feel like if it's the truth and they don't like it, then, well, what can I do about it? Yeah.
It's really, and it's awful if somebody says, I really didn't dig that. It does hurt when you get a bad review. I can't remember. I think I got a bad review for something. Oh, somebody said I did like an impersonation of Tina Fey in Diary of a Wimpy Kid 2. And now that's different. But they were like saying she did like her best Tina Fey Liz Lemon impersonation. And that sucked. Like that was like, I feel bad. Number one, I feel bad for Tina. because I'm sure she was like, wow. I'm like, no, but and then second, of course it hurts when critics say things.
But don't you think that's just like America wanting to classify everything? Everything has to be like something else. So
it was really stupid. But at the same time, I would rather put myself out there completely and go for it and risk people not liking it. Because this is the thing, is that as I've gone along, the things that I have been the most honest about, the things that I have been, gone to places that were very vulnerable and tough, the way that it has been received has been very well. So I feel like people want to experience, the people know when you're bullshitting.
No, totally. I believe that.
And it's like, because you've seen things before where you're
absolutely.
like, I don't buy it, and I wasn't invested in the characters. And I think the only way that you get invested in people is when you really feel like they're being vulnerable.
But the flip side then is that people believe you when you do things like The Hangover, and then you're stuck with that being your persona. So we're like, it's this vicious cycle.
There really is like a part of me that can get that vicious.
I think anyone can.
And if anybody said that, if they portrayed that in a film, and they said, oh, I could never be that vicious. I'm not like her all the time, but there is a side of me that can really go for the jugular like that. And,
I think that's why people like the character, though, is that people understand.
If I had been doing if I hadn't really gone there, I don't think it would have been as
But the problem is
satisfying.
You put a face to people's feeling that way. So people might relate to that, but they're like, that's the one that I can see when I think that. And it's sort of like, you're too good at sort of channeling that emotion. So
I am. I'm really good at channeling anger.
So you've got natural selection, which is starting to roll out to festivals and stuff. Distribution, hopefully, come fall.
Definitely.
What's next for you after this?
Well, like I said, I'm doing the short film with Julia Louis-Dreyfus in June. There's talk of Wimpy Kid 3.
I can see that happening.
And then we're
It's a beloved story. Like, people really like that storyline.
I know they do. Yeah. And I love the books.
Yeah, no, the books are highly, highly regarded.
They're so great. So. And then there is a possibility that we I did a pilot for Fox. this year, so there's a chance that will become a mid-season replacement. But if not, then there's a couple of indies that I'm attached to right now that they're trying to get funding. You know, the whole deal.
Yeah.
But there's one with Ray Liotta that I really hope happens.
Wow, that would be neat.
I know, right? And I would be completely a different person. I would be like a very, like sort of nuts and bolt, like a very crunchy granola gal that like works with him, which would be great.
That's funny. Besides, acting, do you ever think about directing or writing or all this other stuff? Like,
it's I don't want to write. I know too many writers and they're obsessed and they're like it's you that's no joke.
Yeah, I believe
you
it.
have to be serious.
Yeah.
Like I don't want to just insult writers by being like, yeah, I think I'll write something. Like no. Because I know how many hours I've put into training to be an actor, and I kind of resent it when people are like, yeah, I'm thinking about acting. Like people are like, I could do what you do, and I'm like, really?
Yeah.
Then do it. But I think as far as directing goes, though, I find myself, when I'm watching something on set, I always think, oh, I would do it this way, or I think it would work better this way. And since I wrote and did a bunch of sketches at the Groundlings, I think I'd like to start maybe doing some short films. Sure. But it would have to be somebody else would write it, and then and also I'm friends with Rob Hubel, and
nice.
Those guys at Funny or Die, there's a bit we've been trying to get done for forever. That I want to produce.
Yeah, sort of like baby steps.
Baby steps, yeah. I like starting out in the mailroom and then working my way up.
I think that's a very respectable approach, blue collar sort of approach.
And I was raised in Ohio, very blue collar work ethic. So
makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Websites, Twitters, Facebooks.
I am on Twitter at Rachael E. Harris. Rachael Harris.
I'll put a little thing down here.
Oh, good. Okay, great. And then then I have a Facebook page for Rachael Harris. Like, it's just me looking super airbrushed. And,
hey, it's Hollywood. You got to do what you got to do.
Gross. It's gross. But yeah. So that's it.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for joining us.
Spencer, you're awesome.
Thank you so much. We look forward to the success of Natural Selection.
I know. Have you seen it yet?
Yeah, it was good.
Oh, okay, good.
Yeah.
I didn't even ask you that. I didn't know if you liked it or anything.
We'll get. Okay, I'll give it. I very much did enjoy it. I'm definitely a strong indie supporter. I've helped out at film festivals and stuff like that, so I'm a very big advocate for indie films because I think they can be just as entertaining as mainstream work. But it always kills me when I walk through a place like Scarecrow and I see these little indie films that I'm promoted over time that nobody's really ever seen. It's sort of like, this is such a good film.
Why isn't anybody seeing? I know, it's all about marketing too. That's fucking crazy.
And that's why I'm glad that you could come out here and promote.
Come to Scarecrow in Seattle. It will blow your mind.
Blow your mind.
It will blow it. It'll blow it out.
And
then, unfortunately, you won't be able to see the movies.
Well, they'll definitely have Natural Selection come the time that it's
I can't wait till the day that Scarecrow has Natural Selection. That's great.
So,
all right.
Thank you for joining me. Good luck with Natural Selection.
Thank you.
Look forward to seeing what's next.
Thank you so much, Spencer.
T-1000 can't stop me. I'm on fire tonight. Magneto can't stop me. I'm on fire tonight. Even Zod can't stop me. I'm on fire tonight. It's tight, don't even try to bite the side style. Mr. Spock can't stop me. I'm on fire tonight. The Wrath of Khan can't stop me. I'm on fire tonight. The Borg can't stop me. I'm on fire tonight. Because I've got space game and it feels alright.